Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome again. Wow, it's been a really long day. We started this art talk from 12 on sharp, and then now it's almost 10 past 5. So it was really long day, kind of relay, art talks. But I do, thank all of the audience. Welcome back. And then our final session, Global Art Now. And before the advent of Freeze Soul tomorrow, I actually have these questions from some of the Korean audiences. If you are the audiences in Korea, what would you like to listen from our distinguished guest from abroad? Many people want to know how this global museum and great collections, how they choose the great new talents for their new talents in their collections. That was the questions for many new collectors and the museums. That's why under those ideas and collections, I was thinking, who can be the great candidate for those answers? And then now I'm very, very pleased to present and introduce our great distinguished guest. Now the Caroline Bourgeois, who is the head of curator of the Pinot collection. And let's give her applause. Okay. As you know that she has been working for Pinot collection in last 25 years.
No, 14, which is already a lot. And I did the video collection from 1998 to 2001.
Yes, very exact answers. And then she recently opened for the Bourse de Commerce, another beautiful Pinot collection in Paris. So now the door is opened after a big, long 2 years COVID. So Bourse de Commerce, another beautiful Pinot collection after Venice. Welcome you again, and then she will, tell us about great, collection of Pinot collection today. And then, secondly, we have the. Can I introduce maybe Skarlet Smatana, who is running the Georges Economo collection. Maybe Georges Economo collection has not been properly, widely, known in Korean audiences. But it's a very amazing corporate collection based in Athens. But Georges Economo collection has a permanent loan collection in Tate Modern. And they have been, really intensive and academic and researched collection. And she has been, directing the collection, right now. And then before she was working at the Pace Gallery, also working at the Peggy Guggenheim Museum. And then now, she's running the whole, museum program as a director. So we also welcome her in Korea and then as our great panelist. Thank her.
Thank you, Jian.
And Aaron Cezar, he's also, came to Korea several times. And then, he is actually really working with many of Korean artists because, he is the director of Delfina Foundation. Maybe one of you already know that the Delfina Foundation made a collaboration with Songun Art Center in Korea. That's why Songun and Delfina already, made a good collaboration fostering Korean artists engagement with the Delfina Foundation. So one of the very leading artist residency and then engagement with the artist, and the society and community. So one of the very amazing role model. So I think with this kind of distinguished panelist, I believe we can find the interesting conversation. So how these wonderful curators can find the right talents for the new artists, for their collections, and for their program. I welcome you again, and then let's start our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. As I am the first, what you're going to see behind is the PowerPoint of the opening exhibition of the Bourse de Commerce, which is the new space in Paris, which François Pinault decided to sign himself, which shows his commitment, and it will give you a kind of right portrait of the collection. We have two other spaces in Venice, where we have an exhibition of Marlène Dumas at the Palazzo Grassi, and of Bruce Nauman, a quite radical show at the Punta della Dogana. The show, you can just run the images one by one. You will see that we have, first, François Pinault started the collection as a self-made man and started with the proximity. So he started with Nabi period, then went into abstraction when he met the Mondrian figure, and then started to collect and be involved with the younger people or people who can shock. As he's an entrepreneur, he wanted to be surprised without, not to be reassured. So he always goes where there is question. The idea of making a public location was not at all at the beginning, and even when we started, and we know each other since quite a while, we were a very little team to do a lot. We just became a bit bigger now because there's the Bourse de Commerce. Otherwise, we were four to work at the collection, and I was the only curator for a number of years. So it gives you the idea of a family relationship, an involvement, and in general, we also visit a lot the artists with François Pinault. It's not just going through galleries, or we really want to know the project behind. The collection is defined by when we start with an artist, we follow for a long time. And for the opening show, we had nearly a monographic show by David Hammonds. David Hammonds is an incredible figure from New York. He started more than 35 years ago when no one knew about him. And we are probably the largest collection of David Hammonds, and we're the first in Europe who were able to do an exhibition for him. And that was a gift for Paris. On the second floor, because I will go to the younger one, we decided before COVID, because all that has been planned before COVID, to do a show around figure and to be very equilibrated in between woman and man and between different colors of origin. And we decided to mix, since the beginning, younger and more established people. Compared to public museum in Paris, we are a complement. For example, there's no David Hammonds in any French institution. There's no Marlène Dumas in any of the institution. There's a rare Kippenberger at the Museum of Modern Art, but not so much. So we can propose to the public something else in complement of the public collection. In terms of young artists, also when we start with a young artist, first, this is a lot my role, so I start to follow, and I usually met with her and him to understand what's the project behind, because you can always be seduced by a work, but it doesn't mean that it's solid on the longer run. I know we all experimented that. And when you go for young artists, of course, sometimes you can also make mistakes. That's what you have to be ready to do. And in the opening show, we included young artists on the rhythm on that second floor. In a way, Claire Tabouret is still a young artist, even if she went quite high on auction, etc. But when we started with her, she had no venue at all, and we started like 10 years ago. So she had to be also in the first show to show how involved we are. The second young one, which was in the presentation, you will see images little by little. You can go quicker because I'm already on the second floor. It's Xini Cheng, which I met the work about 7 years ago. She was from China. She moved slowly to Paris, and we followed her with the collection since 5 years. She had her first institution exhibition in Paris 6 months ago, and she will have her first New York show with Matthew Marks in November, and part of our job is that we do follow and are with the artists all the way. So it means to keep distance when there's too much to protect. Also, when we buy a young artist or we start with a young artist, we never say to anyone before we show, because otherwise there would be a lot of perverse effects. And that was the thing we did with the Xini Cheng. We didn't say to anyone, even if we started 5 years ago.
Well, but I think, because I rather pose, if it is okay.
Yes.
Because I think, it was very interesting, saying that, whenever Caroline, found a new young artist, or her or him, she asked about the project. I think that is very interesting things to ask. Because, some people just see one image and some art, and they think, oh, this is good and bad. Of course, some experts, who can make a decision like that way. I think this is amazing. But I think many curators and good curators always ask project behind. So I think that's a really interesting answer.
And also the risk that you can see the artist is taking, not to repeat the same thing. If you, on the web, you can look at Xini Cheng, and when you see her first paintings, it's a lot more flat than what it became now, and you see how much research and risk she's taking with the subject, the way of doing, the colors, and she's backward and forward with the bigger art history. So she, for example, we visited a lot of exhibitions together, including Paula Rego, which now everyone speaks about, but no one a few years ago. So it's a that's also important, that you not just repeat what you know, but that you challenge what you don't know. It's a way of living for everyone, not just artists, I think.
Yeah, actually, the Cindy Chang, the very young artist, she was born in 1987.
Yeah, something like that. She's not 40.
Yeah, a very young artist. But it was really amazing. It's a small, portrait. But if you can see that, wow, Cindy Chang, portrait, small portrait in the Pinot collection, very young artist, right next to the Martin Dumas. As you can see, that work, you can see that, how this young artist appears suddenly, that artist. But as you can say, in the Pinot collection, they found this artist, long time ago, but they didn't really, say that, but really keeping, their artist, presence, and then watching them, researching them. And I think, that was really, a good thing to support the artist, and then, making a context, for that artist's presence in their collection. So I think just I can make a little bit of a complimentary of these artists because that artist can be very, maybe new for the Korean audiences.
She showed in some international fair, and I discovered her at Independent about 7 or 8 years ago, and she was close. So how we found, I'm very close with a lot of artists, so we exchange a lot. And she was a friend of someone called Alvaro Barrington, who I met in an alternative space. So we were, the sources is really, it could be a biennale, it could be a young gallery that we follow, it could be another artist, it could be a teacher in an art school, it could be and on and on. So there's no one way to discover or to follow a young artist, including residencies. It's a big way too. According what you asked me, you wanted that I spoke about another of the young artists in the exhibition, or maybe?
Yeah, maybe if you want to add a couple of, maybe Liette Yadon Boake.
She's still young, but now
Still
quite
young.
famous.
Yes, very famous.
I would go to Cezar, which is a bit after Marlène Dumas on the PowerPoint, because in the exhibition we really mix generation and origins. And Cezar, she was the youngest of the whole show. She was 23 or 24.
Yes.
I met her in New York in a tiny studio. And she was performing, making sculpture with founded objects she could find in the streets, and starting to paint with a big question with the body, the identity of the body, what's sexuality beyond sex, and she's herself someone who moved from being a man to being a woman. And so a lot of research, and I think I was one of the few first people to meet her thanks to a friend. And she was agreed by Marlène Dumas because in the exhibition she was next to Marlène, and I follow her since, and I introduced her. That could be part of to introduce the very young one to some galleries who could be able to do a risk, but at the time, so she did a show in Paris in the gallery, but at the time she didn't want anything. She's very radical and still radical, and still on her early days of her career. But maybe because there's a lot others coming from Brazil, coming from Brazil, coming from Germany. So in that sense, we don't look at nationality, but we look at what a work could be able to discuss with other artists' work in the collection, as we do either monographic exhibition, but that you need to have quite a career yet because the spaces are big, either in Paris or in Venice, or to be able to create dialogue in thematic exhibition that we do with the collection. Thanks. There's time for the others. Sorry.
Yes, yes. I think it's a very interesting, introduction of Pinot collection. Of course, I mean, we are actually showing the whole, flow we can cover here, but I think it was really interesting to see the, very young artist, selection, but at the same time, the right next to the Marlène Dumas, the Peter Doig, and the Joachim and Cezar and Cheng. It was a very interesting juxtaposition of the great masters with the young artists together at the, particularly the Pinot collection this time. That actually brought us to think how, this new artist appears, together. That was very interesting moment to see, how tutorial research has been engaged, at this, time today. So maybe, we can listen to, Skarlet, from the Georges Economic collection.
Thank you, Jian. Thank you for hosting all of us today, and thank you to all of our audiences that have joined us as well. As Yoon mentioned, I'm the director of the Georges Economic Collection. I've held the position for 10 years. And the collection is rather principled, whereby we focus quite heavily on the history, social awareness, and aesthetics of art. And we look also to history, historical works, as well as work that's being made today, emerging artists and mid-career artists. The founder of the collection is Georges Economu. And with Georges Economu, he began collecting in the 1990s, and specifically was collecting 20th century European art, and gradually shifted into post-war and contemporary. The centrality of the European contemporary, or the European 20th century, was predominantly German, German expressionist and new objectivity. And from there, we were able to grow further into German art, post-war and contemporary, and then into international artists. And a few of the German artists would have included Jörg Baselitz, Gerhard Richter, Sigmar Polka, Blinky Palermo, Isa Gensken, and then shifting into international artists, it would have been David Hockney or Francis Bacon, Louise Bourgeois, and then onward into Mark Bradford or Kerry James Marshall, Katsuo Shiraga. And it's a family collection, so Georges Economu also has a daughter who joins us in focusing on advising and curating the collection in her generation. So artists today that are in their 30s and 40s. And it allows the collection to have a great breadth of the 20th century and then shifting quite well into our present day. We also have the Friends of the Collection, which are cultural entities that we have very strong working ties. And some of them are major institutions like the Metropolitan, as well as the Dia Art Foundation. We have the Whitney Museum of American Art, and then a few smaller galleries of, in the UK, the Camden Art Centre, and the Palais de Tokyo. So we're quite a holistic endeavor, and we try to cover quite a bit. And as Carolyn mentioned, that we do a lot of research in the younger artists that are happening today as well. We can move to the next slide. So in the gallery, we do 1 to 2 exhibitions per year, and they're predominantly established artists, and they're monographic exhibitions. Currently, we have Katharina Fritsch. She's a German artist, and her work spans about 4 decades, and a great sculptor of our time. She was born in West Germany in Essen in 1956 and studied at the Kunstakademie in Düsseldorf. Can you just go back a couple of... Okay, and the next slide, please. So this is actually the first floor of our exhibition space, where we have 3 of Katerina's sculptures, one being a white human skull, a lantern that's purple and black, and also an egg that's of equal halves, orange and yellow. Her work is highly regarded, and it was an absolute honor to be able to present the work in Greece for the first time. And the majority of our exhibitions that we do, the international artists are exhibiting in Greece for the first time, so we're able to reach the public within the country and then also internationally. So this is an example of a few of our past exhibitions, where our very last exhibition was with Jeff Wall. And when we started in 2013, the exhibition space opened in 2012. And in 2013, we started with Terrence Simon, a conceptual photographer, and then artist Rashid Johnson, who at the time was 35 and has since expanded into a broader career and with a worldwide reach. And we've continued to collect him and support him in depth as we've gone along over the years in these last 10 years. We also have had Paul McCarthy, Georg Baselitz, and Jenny Saville, of course, and David Hammonds, which is an artist that Carolyn and I both share, and Charles Ray is an artist that we've both exhibited as well in our respective spaces. You will also notice that we have some thematic exhibitions, and that's where we've incorporated the historical work from the collection. One of them, New Beginnings, was curated by Francis Morris, the director of the Tate Modern, and there we were able to exhibit a lot of international art that was post-war, significantly post-war, and that included Italian, German, French, Korean as well, Japanese, and Dutch. So this is the first floor gallery showing Jeff Wall's work, conceptual photographer, significant, also his work spanning 4 decades. A very important artist that's based in Vancouver. He was born in 1946. His photography has influenced enormously generations of photographers, but also conceptual artists working today. This slide here is showing Jenny Saville, who's a British painter, and she was born in 1970, where she's examining, using heavily oiled paint on canvas, the structure of the body, the female form, and the consideration of the flesh. She is working, she's working against figuration as well as abstraction simultaneously. Willem de Kooning is a great influence on her work, but then so is classical figuration, Tintoretto as well. And other ways that we contribute from the collection is having a great lending program, which the Pinot collection does as well, but it's very much open to various public and private institutions. In this example, we have a young artist from Zimbabwe. She is born in 1985, Portia Zwavahera, And she's currently exhibiting 4 panels at the Whitney Biennale, the 59th Biennale. And it's an absolute honor to know that she's in this exhibition. And Louise Bourgeois is an artist that we collected very early on. And we actually started collecting Louise Bourgeois paintings because they were so rare. And she began with the paintings in 1939 and through 1947. And they became a lexicon of symbolism for the work that she would make in her sculpture later on in her career. This painting is recently lent to the Metropolitan Museum of Art that did a survey of 100 paintings that she made specifically during that period, and they haven't been seen, and some of them have never been seen, and they really haven't been known for the last 40 years.
Wow, I think, I mean, it's endless. I think, I mean, Georgia Economy collection, frankly, I mean, it's really, I mean, lesser known, but I think the collection, I mean, comprises of one of the most, I mean, really, I mean, thoughtfully researched and one of the really top, sort of more than a blue chip, I mean, collection, I mean, if we say. But, I mean, as you say that, I mean, you have some lending, I mean, program. I mean, what was the program name? I mean, you have inviting some of young artists, the residency program, or what sort of program?
Oh, no, the lending is various paintings. So the way that we support the artists that are living within our program is that one of the ways is lending.
Yes.
And so it's very important that an artist that hasn't made much work, and perhaps they're a painter that only makes 3 or 4 a year, it's absolutely necessary that they're able to have the paintings wherever they need them.
Oh, I see.
So we make that as available to them as much as possible. But there are other ways that we support them too, whether we can financially assist in the production of the exhibition, whether it's through shipping or the publication of their catalog. And I mentioned that a little bit here, but this is also an example of a Jenny Saville painting that was recently lent to Florence, which was a monumental survey exhibition spanning 5 institutions in Florence. And I think in the next slide, we talk about Peter Doig as well. Caroline and I share him as an artist. And the Metropolitan Museum of Art did not have a painting within their permanent collection. So Mr. Economu was able to work with Peter Doig, and he was able to acquire the painting so the Metropolitan would be able to finally have one decisive picture for the collection. So that's another way that we're able to work with artists and help support both the community, the artist, and the cultural institution.
And also, I know that, I mean, you have been collecting Korean art a lot, and also very historical ones, I mean, you have them. So
Yes.
maybe you can tell us about your Korean art collection.
Oh, yes. No, absolutely. We spent a number of years from about 2013 through the end of 2015 traveling to Korea together, as well as visiting the Biennale, visiting Seoul. And at that time, we were quite saturated within the cultural scene, but predominantly the history, because we wanted to complement the post-war section of the collection, which would have included Japanese as well, French, and Italian. And so Dansekwa is quite known in the collection, and it's quite established.
Because as far as I know, I mean, they have, I mean, collected Dansekwa since 1969, and very important, the Pak Sobo, the Écriture, very important, I mean, 1969 until year 2000.
No, about 1980.
1980s. Up
Yeah.
to very historical ones they have been collecting since year 2013, which was much earlier than the Dansekwa phenomena has been really overwhelmed even in Korean market. How, I mean, did you think, I mean, the Dansekwa is very important?
Well, it's nationalistic for Korea. So when we were studying Japanese gutai, then we were understanding the chronology of the history between the two countries and how that is expressed in their individual capacities. But that expression is so significant as you're coming out of war times or times of turmoil. And that's what we wanted to record, is how the human spirit is rendering
Yes.
that moment.
Yes. I think, in that sense, because the George Economy collection really, researching in the, history, research based. In that sense, you maybe approach it to Korea as, the historical perspective, this kind of importance, Korean modern painting, dansekwa, as the importance, the values. That's why maybe you started a little bit earlier than the market really heated it up to now. Maybe Economu, the collection, and the old international, collection supported. And actually, in last 2-3 years,
That's true.
before, the Korean Tansekwa movement really, heated it up, and the market now, finally, made a great international, stance, at the moment. So I think it was really interesting, how this relationship between the collection in international, institutional relationship between the local market, international market, and the institutional, importance and their roles. I think we can see that this whole ecosystem are all interrelated, and we can see that. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just wanted to conclude with one final section.
Yes.
June, you and I have spoken quite a bit about the artists that we've been collecting that are emerging and younger generations
Yes.
of recent capacities. So I'd be happy to oblige you, but if we could just move forward. We can go onward. This was
A little bit further.
yeah. Just regarding David Hammonds, this was a public project that we supported, so he was able to facilitate Day's End, which was something that the Whitney Museum of American Art and the Hudson River Trust Fund were able to create together. Is the first project of its kind of an African American artist on this scale. Sorry. One more. So one of the artists is Shara Hughes, which I suppose many of you are quite aware of. She's an American artist born in 1981. And Shara is not necessarily a landscape painter, but she does work in imaginative scenarios where she allows the viewer to enter the space and allow them to acknowledge their own memories and their own narrative to fulfill her canvases. But as you can see, the representations of her ideas take the forms of these blazed suns or gnarled trees and so forth. She studied at the Rhode Island School of Design, and she is quite established already at this stage in permanent collections as well as monographic exhibitions, and she will be having a forthcoming exhibition at the Kunstmuseum Luzerne this month. And Julian Nguyen is a Vietnamese American artist, and he's born in 1990. Very proficient in his abilities in painting. He is capturing the likes of friends and lovers, and in this Italian Renaissance, traditional Italian Renaissance style. And then he's also quite heavily influenced by science fiction and video game design. He is also a student of the Rhode Island School of Design. He also had a monographic show at the Swiss Institute and was shown at the Whitney Biennial in 2017. Mohammed Sami is an Iraqi-born artist from 1984, and he holds very evocative paintings where there's this absence of the figure, yet the human presence is consistently there, whether they're in objects or in spaces. Somewhat like it appears as if someone has left the room. Mohammed, he's now living in London, and but while he was in Iraq and in Baghdad, he escaped to Sweden at the age of 23 in 2007. And he's very fortunate to have studied at the Goldsmiths College for his MFA degree. He's in the permanent collections already with the Museum of Modern Art, and will be exhibiting this month at the 58th Carnegie International. He's also appearing in Tokyo right now at the Triennial. And Justin Kagyat was born in Tokyo in 1990, and I think at this moment in time, well, he's living in Oakland, California, but at this moment in time, he's quite, his saturated paintings have become quite attractive to the public. There's this Viennese modernism associated to the canvas where you have these animal-like forms and figurative forms that come in and out of the canvas, and they're unstretched in these saturated and overly patterned surfaces. I think we will see a lot more coming from Justin going forward. And we will be showing Stephen Scherer, a Canadian painter who is living and working in Vancouver, Canada, though Stephen is quite established. He is born in 1968, and he will be our next exhibition in Athens in June of 2023. And Stephen studied in Canada at the Emily Carr University of Art and Design. And with Stephen, he combines canonical art historical subjects with contemporary time and with contemporary figures. And those tend to be representations of youth culture. And those representations tend to manifest in their alienation or melancholy or that allure. And it often takes the realm of popular music. So you'll often see long-haired, metalheads and in these melancholic forms. So Stephen is quite talented, whether he's not just involved in painting, he's quite masterly in various forms, whether they're silkscreen prints. He's also creating sculpture. He's also a poet. So he's quite masterful in his various mediums. But we're excited to show him next summer.
Wow, amazing list of new stars. I think we are unfolding of great names today. I think, these are the, young collection, artists, in George Economy collection now.
It's a small sampling.
Yes.
Yeah. As Carolyn and I are running around, looking at artists always quite early and for long periods of time before we make it more known. And but the most important thing is to support their careers.
Yes.
And I really agree with everything Carolyn has said about the artists. There has to be an independence and a drive to be determined in their career and faithful in themselves and in their practice, and not to have any fear to shift, to change directions. Mm-hmm. It's very important, exactly. And to allow for that social and political cause in the work. It's and a little bit of humility is also helpful.
Yes. I think it's really, wonderful to hear, this sort of curatorial concerns and then, cares of this artist development. But at the same time, I think Aaron has lots of, things to say because, these, early, stages, Aaron is always there. If those, before the big glorious, times comes. But Aaron is really at the right stage. Before the artist, getting into the big, artist, the door. Aaron is running the very important artist residency, program on spot. So maybe Aaron, you can tell us about your experiences.
Much, Jayun. It's a pleasure to be here today. Unlike my esteemed kind of colleagues here, as Jayun has pointed out, Delphina is a residency space, so we do not have a collection. So instead of dealing with objects, we deal solely with people. And this is through our residency program for artists and curators, but also we engage with collectors and patrons who support our work, but we also have a residency program for collectors kind of as well. And then there is the public at large. particularly arts professionals, who we include as an important part of the public that we engage with, because Delfina is about creating an ecosystem and supporting the ecosystem for the arts. So working very much in tandem with both Skarlet and Caroline and many of our colleagues out in the field. As an organization, though, we do much more than just residencies. So as I tell you about the artists that we work with and how we select them, I'll also tell you about what we do as an organization, which gives you a sense of why we choose certain artists. So I want to start here with our history. We began 30 years ago. We were one of the main international residency spaces in the UK, so creating an opportunity for international artists to travel, to get exposed kind of in the UK and in Europe, and at the same time kind of starting what became the young British art movement. Delfina was very much kind of like at the core, the heart of all of this. Among the first group of artists was Sonia Boyce, in fact, who won the Golden Lion this year at the Venice Biennial for the British Pavilion. And coincidentally, the winner of the Silver Lion was a Delfina Foundation alumni artist, Ali Cherry. I want to take you to one of the first Korean artists that Delfina Studios work with, Yang Haegu. This is an image of, we'll get to it inside, this is an image of a work that was produced during her residency at Delfina Studios in 2004. This was 18 years ago, a very difficult time for Haegu, who was being challenged artistically and financially. She was really struggling, but yet this work emerged from the residency because a residency can be a very formative experience for an artist to situate their practice in an international context, but that can also be unsettling too. So this work, many curators and even Haegu herself says was a turning point in her career 18 years ago. This is Delfina's current building. It's a home. We've been in this home since 2007, so 14 years. We've hosted about 400 artists in this space, living and working, and we do a range of different activities in the house, from exhibitions to eating together, research, and it's very much a base for artists in London to explore the city, to think of the city as a studio, not just a building itself. We often talk about Delfina as a place of care, a safe haven for artists. And so I wanted to start with this artist, Antonia Oba, who is an artist that the Pinot Collection has. That's why I purposefully put it here. We hosted one of Antonio's probably first international residencies, and it was at a very difficult time for the artist because his life was under threat. He was receiving death threats in Brazil for producing anti-religious kind of artwork. So Delfina really provided a lifeline for the artist, a place of safety and care and protection to then launch his career from there. And that was around the same time, I think, that Caroline, was exposed to his work. So this gives you a sense how we all kind of work together, as it were. If we go to the next slide, I wanted to show another Brazilian artist, Maxwell Alexandre, who had to receive a passport to come into his residency at Delfina. It was his first ever time leaving Brazil. He grew up in a favela, and a lot of his works as an artist responds to this context, to his community. And when you talked to Skarlet about determination, this was the thing that we saw most in Maxwell. It wasn't his biography. It was actually his determination to make it as an artist, and also what his own community would learn through his travels, through him being exposed to other things. Shortly after his residency at Delfina, in fact, 2 years later, he was invited back to London to do a solo show at David Zwirner Gallery, to take over 2 floors of the gallery, which is an amazing achievement for an artist who's 30 years old. And then he recently had a solo show at Palais de Tokyo, where I'm sure you've seen the work. Caroline has met him as well. Just to go to to talk about the whole purpose of a residency generally, it is this opportunity for artists to step forward, to a stepping stone throughout their career, not just to commercial opportunities, as we're discussing with Maxwell, because there are different types of artists. Some artists have social practices, so their work is going to go into a community, rather than a gallery. Some artists will teach. But regardless, it's difficult for artists to navigate the art world because there's no straightforward direction. Like we all have to support them in different ways for them to find clarity and build their careers. And this is particularly difficult for artists who have more challenging practices that are maybe social or things like performance, for example. And so I want to move to our next example of Jeong Kam-young, who was in residence with us in 2017, whose work primarily focused on performance at that time. She used Delphine as a stepping stone to work more in the visual arts. And what's incredible about her experience at Delphina was that we were able to create a whole ecosystem around her work. This is an image of a performance that took place at Tate in partnership with Delphina Foundation. The next image is of a series of works that she produced during her residency, which was displayed in the tanks at Tate. So that came through a period of research at Delphina. Meanwhile, we showed what was the artist's second exhibition ever. And it was an exhibition of objects that she collects in order to perform with. So they're props for her performance. And now she's gotten into making work from this material. And which is most recently displayed in the Venice Biennale, which is the image you're looking at now. Delphina has, I think, 14 artists who are exhibiting in the Venice Biennale this year, many in the central exhibition and a lot in national pavilions and the collateral exhibition. So we're very proud of the achievement of these artists. But for someone like Kam-young, who has this practices about performance, it can be even more challenging to try and find your way in the art world and to find, I guess, maybe a market for your work. Also this year, she was part of a group exhibition at David Zwirner Gallery. Also David Zwirner again. I mean, I don't, it's just a coincidence, is this gallery I'm talking about now. But for her, she allowed them to show her work, but not to sell it. Because she's still trying to work out her relationship to the commercial market and whether it's a place for her. But at least we've given her the opportunity to have choices as an artist, which is the thing that we all want to do, give people the freedom of choice. Let's go to the next slide, just to talk about our role in residencies as a commissioner of talent. As Ji-yoon mentioned earlier, we have a partnership with Songun Art and Cultural Foundation here in Korea, and since 2015, we've invited maybe 10 Korean artists to London to participate in our programs. And when we've looked at the Korean artists, what we're most interested in is what they also are going to bring from Korea to London. You know, it's not about always what they're going to learn in the West and bring here. It has to be an exchange. And this, what I'm showing now, is outcomes of an exhibition that I curated at Songun Art Space in 2018. It was 4 years ago. It was my last time in Korea. And it's collaborative works by artists who were in residence at Delphina many years ago. So, and it's led by one Korean artist who met an international artist during their residency. They remained friends. And we asked them to look at the politics of their friendship through the exhibition, which is called Power Play. It was a very interesting experience with the artist. And if we go to the next slide, I'm going to show a few of our other co-commissions that we've done. At the top is the Korean artist Hong Young-in, Young-in Hong, who was shortlisted for the Korea Art Prize in 2019. This is the outcomes of a residency in 2014 at Delphina. It was a co-commission with the Gwangju Biennial, a performance work. And then there's a Chinese artist, Yu Ji, with the Chisenhale Gallery, and a publication that we produced with the V&A Museum, an Indian artist responding to their South Asian collections. So we do a lot of work with museums and galleries, artists intervening or responding to institutional collections. Residencies at Delphina are also a way of building relationships, not just with the arts ecosystem, but with the global ecosystem. A lot of our themes engage with political and social ideas. We have a very popular theme called Politics of Food, for which we just recently produced a publication. But I wanted to show you the work of Cooking Sections, a collective who are showing in a Busan Biennial, which opens tomorrow, I think, or this weekend. And these artists, if we go to the next slide, for us, when we selected them with the purpose of trying to understand what we as an institution would learn from them, from their practice. As we were interested in building up a thematic around the politics of food, we wanted to look to the artists. We all look to artists to learn from artists. So in this case, it was to help us as an institution think about our own kind of programming. This was 10 years ago when we first worked with them. They were nominated for the Turner Prize last year. In 2019, I was asked to co-curate the performance program at the Venice Biennale, and I included cooking sections in an incredible program we did over the opening and closing of the Biennale. This is cooking sections, Bozang from China, and an Italian collective called Inverno Muto. This is Nastio Mosquito. The next slide, sorry, is Nastio Mosquito in the Giardini. And the next one is, we can keep going to the next 3 slides faster because I'm running out of time. But this is a performance by Solange Knowles, the Grammy Award-winning musician and artist who we brought to Venice. It's the first time we're able to actually show these images because she just produced a book, so now they're out in the public domain. We can share them. And if we land on the last slide, I just want to point out that a lot of our role is about cultivating patronage and a knowledge of collecting in very radical ways. Over the last 5 years, we've had 16 residencies for collectors to explore their private passion and how they can take this private interest and make a much bigger public impact. So often this is through institution building, through patronage, or through different forms of collecting. Sometimes collecting the uncollectible, kind of performance, kind of for example. And so really trying to rethink kind of what these labels mean, because the word collector can mean many different things to many different people. And I think we all present different examples of here. And I think we're going to discuss this kind of going forth now. So I will hand over to Jayoon. That's it.
Well, I think, almost, time is running, but I think, it's definitely, great to hear all these, great distinguished guest voices, because, a very different perspective, but as you can, understand that, because the most important thing is, well, listening to artists and carrying artists and respect artists and working together with living contemporary artists. I think that's one of the starting point, what we are working on right now, I think. Because I think, when the art market starts in Asia, and particularly in Korea now, because many people start to approach in art market. Now, many people are asking, oh, how we can find a new talent? What is the best thing to buy? They always, ask questions, what is the best buy to invest, rather than how to find a good artist. I think the questions has been a little bit differently addressed. Maybe they want to buy good art, but maybe their phrase may be a little bit different. Maybe, that's why I rather want to bring up this idea. When we are starting, of this global new market right in front, we already started it in last 15 years. I think many people say that Korea has one of the really much more sophisticated collection we have been developing, and now we are seeing it. Through the corporate collection, from the individual collections. But I think it's really good timing to address to our younger generations collectors. And from our previous sessions, one of the Sotheby directors say that in Asia, in Hong Kong, the 50% of collectors is under 40s. It was really amazing to hear that the collectors, the age has been really drops down. And then also, I heard that, the frieze, receive a great attention to much younger generation. I think in this kind of, state, the time, I think, it'll be good to, share some of your insight, to the new collectors to be. What can it be the best idea? How to start to collect, art from today? Maybe that sort of approach, I want you to, share your ideas. Before we finishing, we have only 10 minutes, but I want to hear from all of you today.
I start because I started before, and I try to be super fast to allow more time for the discussion. But we do have also a residency, which is the opposite of it's to give time to the artists, which I think time is an important frame, that there's not only a work, a gallery, a mark.
Yes.
And that we are living today a lot of rewriting of the history. We were all discussing that, coming from different point of view. There's a lot of international events trying to raise those different point of view, including the one you said about the Second World War. And for example, the raise of women position in arts change a lot, and it's going on and going on. And also you can make a great collection with not so much money, that you can be, yeah, and that it's, but you need to be involved, and I would highly suggest to meet the artists if possible, because at one point it can be a dialogue. When you start with younger artists, you start at the moment that they're going to create their world, and you help them to be confident. And I know we do that a lot, which can take time, not immediately be a market thing.
I have a good example, actually. One of the collectors in residence, just picking up on Caroline's part, is a Japanese collector called Daisuke Miyatsu, who is an office worker. You know, he gets on a train, you know, goes through all this, but he's built an incredible collection over 25 years through relationships with artists. He has some of Kusama's really early works. His house was designed with Dominique Gonzalez Forrester, and it has, you know him, yes, an incredible collector. He also has a collection of tattoos by artists. So there's a conversation point with an artist, and then a tattoo is realized on his body, actually. But the point, it's about these relationships with artists. It's not about the money, the amount of money that you have. You do not collect with your wallet, okay? You collect with your heart, your eyes, and your ears, okay? So you have to listen to what's happening around you.
Actually,
I know, and I was about to add that. It has to be in balance between those three things. If one is dominating the other, it's problematic.
100%. Actually, I wrote about that. I mean, Datsuke Miyatsu, I mean, in like 5 to 7 years ago in one of the Jungang Sunday article, because, I mean, it was really amazing story. I mean, you can actually find in Korean Jungang Sunday one time. Because, I mean, he was like a Samsung salesman, something like that, I mean, in Japanese version. But, I mean, when he come out from the office, his salary was very, you know, after graduation, I mean, his salary is like a 2,000 US dollar, because right after graduation, you know, the normal salary man. But he found one small Kusama painting, at that time, net painting. That was 1993. But he really loved it without having any knowledge about Kusama. He really liked it. But he couldn't afford it because, I mean, that painting was the price of like exactly the 1 year salary. But he go to that gallery every single day. The gallerist promised, okay, in that case, you can make a 12-year installment. That's the way he bought one painting. So, I mean, well, I don't know. I mean, this program is going to be online, but now he's a very famous figure, and he maybe allowed me to say that. I mean, you know, the couple decide not to have a baby. And then, I mean, they really, I mean, start to love collecting things. And he never been, go to the Venice Biennial until, becoming like 10 years after, because they decide to buy that painting, not to buy anything else. And then, and bought that painting. Then, start to go to the artist, exhibition, and becoming all the friends of Nara and all these, friends. That was the moment all the international artists start to come to Japan, very early 1990s.
And he got a second job in a hotel, and he said to the hotel owner of the hotel, offer discount rooms to artists. So that's how he also ended up getting to meet a lot of artists.
Exactly. So I think that was really, interesting. The answers, meeting the artists, engaging with the artists. I think that was very interesting. Pointed to, hear from the both, speakers. So Skarlet, your insight?
You know, we've been using these words, organic and ecosystem and time, and I think they're so vital. Because idea of allowing things to simmer, allowing things to settle down, and to support one another. And it's an engagement that works both ways. So for us too, it's about time and supporting. And this conversation is consistent. And that consistency creates a relationship that is built on trust. And that goes a really long way. And I think you both would understand that very well. Because there are a lot of moments in life that move in many different directions, up and down. And I think, you know, there are so many artists that you've presented very good examples. And I think of the very early relationship that we had with Rashid Johnson, whom I also happened to go to graduate school with. So we're the same age, nearly the same age. But so we can identify with each other and grow together and know that it's okay to shift. It's okay to go in a different direction. And, you know, and over the years, to have that capacity, to have that relationship, that process in and of itself is what makes art so engaging and meaningful. And at the end, when there is a painting or there is a sculpture, I mean, this is the end result, but that entire process is the storyline, and that is what creates the foundation of passion and dedication.
Yes, Caroline?
I would like to add a joke because just to remember that there's a lot of different moments, and I was discussing a show I wanted to do in the plateau about money because everything was only about money all the time. And I started and ended that show with a discussion with Christian Boltanski, which was alive at that time. And if you had a show in between 65 and 75, if you sell a work, it meant that the work was really bad. So just to give you the perspective that time frame change, and sometime, and very often the great collection, including big galleries, is made on the thing which was not sold, which was the more radical one. It's just to give some insight that it's not just the two together, to keep a distance with market value, etc., that everyone is speaking all the time. It's often not happening there. I mean, some yes, but often not.
I think the works that carry the most in terms of time and will outlast all of us. The value of them is not determined by kind of financial value. It's a social value, which is why museums exist, right? It's why they're collecting works that they think, in a way, kind of represents humanity in its largest kind of sense. So as a collector, you should not be thinking about the financial value, but what it means kind of to society, to those around you. And if you care about it passionately, you know, it doesn't matter what the value is later, actually.
Yes. Wow. I think it was really deep thing in a casual way. But I think, thank you very much. I think, we covered in a very big, story in a very short time. But I think, our very consistent, voices has been delivered to you today. And then I do thank you for all again. And then I hope, you enjoyed our conversation. And I hope, you enjoy the great, frieze and the kiaf and our great, new start of global market in Korea, year 2022 in Seoul. Thank you very much today. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.